Hello everybody, welcome to EGX. Hello everyone on Twitch, thank you for watching. Thanks for coming to this session. Today I have the very talented creator of Gunpoint and of course his next game, Heat Signature. It's Tom Francis, so I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Tom. I'm a game developer now, but I was a games journalist for PC Gamer for just over 9 years, and I was always a bit of a dick about it. Obviously, as a critic, you kind of have to analyze game design and say what's wrong with it, if there's something wrong with it, and say what's good about it, if there's something good about it. But I had a nasty habit of going too far and playing armchair game designer and saying, actually, the way you should have done it is this, and you'll find this system works much better without having a clue what I was talking about. And that was okay for about 6 years. I sort of learned to stop doing it because it makes your articles worse. But I still always had those thoughts, had those ideas for like how you should fix this game, how you could make a better game out of this. And so in the last 3 years that I worked there, I decided to start making my own games, see if any of these ideas I was having as a critic would actually work in practice, which you never really know until you actually try building something. And it was kind of triggered by playing Spelunky, which was one of my favorite games. And I found out it was made in GameMaker. And Spelunky is good pretty much entirely because of the game design. It's just a beautifully designed game and is endlessly fresh because of the way it randomly generates things. And I didn't really think I could make Spelunky, but I thought this proves that you can use a tool that's aimed at beginners to make something that will succeed or fail by how good the design is, not necessarily by whether you had a team of 100 people or a degree in computer science, which I didn't have. And so I gave it a go. And after about 3 years of tinkering in my spare time, the sort of first test project that I was doing all my tutorials with became Gunpoint, which is this. So Gunpoint is a side-on stealth infiltration game where you play this little guy in a trench coat trying to break into high-security buildings by firstly just dodging guards. You've got like projectile trousers and prehensile gloves, and you can sort of play Spider-Man / Predator as they run around. But then the main way you solve these levels, the way you get to the computers that you're trying to hack, is with a device called the Crosslink, which is a sort of hacking tool that lets you rewire how all the electronics work. So you can draw a line between any two electronic things, and it will make one of them trigger the other one. And that means that you can basically decide how the level should work. And that kind of came from having dabbled with level design and really enjoying the side of things when you built a level and you just have to hook up the switch to the door. And that stuff is boring if that's what you're going to do, just hook up a switch to a door. But if you're allowed to decide what this particular game, because it lets you experiment more freely, it means you're not scared of dying because you won't lose any progress. So you're free to try stuff like that, which didn't work out for that guy in that particular case. And neither does this, I think. So there are a bunch of ideas like that I always wanted to try. Some of them didn't work so well, but most of them kind of, they may not have made it necessarily a better game than the games that I was criticizing for not doing this, but I think they made it a game that was fun for me. It was my kind of game, basically. And I just wanted a bunch of different things that I'd never seen before to be in the same game, and so I tried making it myself. And when I released this on Steam, it was really successful, and that meant I could basically afford to quit my job and become a full-time developer. So this took 3 years because I was working only in my weekends, and I was completely new to the whole thing. I wasn't really a programmer. I'd had like minimal education in programming. In sixth form, I learned some Visual Basic, but that was it. And so I just did this by following tutorials and kind of teaching it to myself a little bit. So now that that is out there, and now that I've been able to stop doing games journalism and start being a full-time developer, this was about a year ago that it came out. Since then, I've been working full-time as a developer and trying to figure out what I want to do next. So it took a while to figure that out, and I think I'll just launch straight into showing it to you. So I messed around with a few different ideas, including like a heist game. I also made a free game called Floating Point, which is on Steam. Both were kind of to do with grappling hooks and some other ideas I had, but the game I settled on was this, which is heat signature. And at heat signature, right now you choose a class. There's not a lot of variety in the classes. It's do you want to steal stuff or shoot people? Let's steal things first. And you're in a tiny little defenseless ship that can jet around like this. And you can fly around this galaxy. The galaxy is completely infinite at the moment. Partly, it sounds kind of impressive, but then it's infinite because there's nothing in it. So I don't have to generate anything really, except spaceships and clouds. And the clouds look lovely. The art that you see here is new and is by artist John Roberts, who also did the art for Gunpoint. And the music you're hearing right now is by one of our new composers, Alex Burnett. And soon you'll hear the other composer once I actually find a ship. So you're just jetting around, you have no weapons. There are other spaceships in this galaxy that are randomly generated, but I didn't pay attention at the start. You always start near a ship, and in this case I didn't actually look at where it was, so now I've lost it. But as you travel around, you'll always encounter them, and just they spawn all over the place. And they're all randomly generated out of these blocks like this. So they're all a bit different. And they all have different numbers of like thrusters and turrets and stuff, which determine their handling and how good they are in a fight. And so as I approach it, you'll notice, well, you might notice, yeah, there's a big red spike coming towards me, and that is detecting my heat signature. And my heat is increasing every time I'm thrusting. And if you look close, I'm kind of glowing now because I'm so hot. And when I'm not thrusting, I slowly cool down. You might actually be able to hear it. It sounds like a car engine cooling off. And so if you get detected, I'll show you what that looks like. We'll find out how many missile launchers this thing has when it detects me. Yep, that's 2. So it's a stealth game on the spaceship level. You're trying to avoid detection by the spaceships by keeping a heat signature low and avoiding their lines of sight as well. And then once you've made a ship angry, actually, let's just follow these missiles and see where they go. He's lost my signal now, so they can't track me. And you can, if you like, you could just follow these forever and see, like, eventually they'll hit something. There's a line in Mass Effect 3, I think, about that, about if you just fire something into space, eventually it's going to hit something. And that is true in this game, because space is infinite. But I won't do that because it's going to take ages. Actually, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a debug command to spawn a ship in front of it and see what happens then. Let's do that. And oh shit, we missed. I just missed a ship when I was spawning it in for the path of the missiles. Anyway, I'm actually going to go back and board that one. So it's still around. When you leave ships behind, right now they just stay there forever, so actually everything is always simulated, which is a bit ridiculous, and I'm sure I'm going to hit performance problems at some point, but I haven't yet. So it just like fills this infinite galaxy with a potentially infinite number of ships. Let's see how your PC handles that. So yeah, when you get inside a ship, you can then sneak around its corridors, and its crew are patrolling. This guy, even if he comes this way, oh, he didn't come this way, that's good. And it becomes a kind of stealth game about avoiding crew and about getting to where you want in a ship. In fact, the way that guy just came, there was some loot there, so I'm going to try and take him out. So you can just knock them out if you can get to them quickly enough. I could shoot them, but then when I fire, it will attract all the other guards in the ship, of which there are a few, so I'm actually going to show you that next. My objective would be to get to this computer up here, which would have it would let me contact my home base, or whoever they are, to get a new mission. That probably isn't how missions will work in the final thing, but it's just kind of a placeholder thing. So this guy's not facing me. I'm going to shoot him now, and we should see all the guards are running towards me, and I'll see if I can... Yep, okay, they got me. But you don't die when that happens. They just pick you up. Apologies to John, because he's done a beautiful animation for you being carried, and I haven't put it in the game yet, so that's why you look like you're lying on his head. He's going to carry me to the airlock. They know they've been breached now, so they're going to eject my ship, and they're just going to kick me out into space. They don't care whether I live or die, they just want to get rid of me. But I can still remote control my ship, because I'm not actually dead, I'm just very badly injured. So now I'm using a kind of remote control device to steer my ship to come and get me. And as you can see, I'm going to pass out in 24 seconds. So there's a time element to this, and there is my bleeding corpse. And if I can catch up with myself, then you don't see it yet, but the idea is inside your ship you have a kind of like med bay that will heal you when that happens. You do lose some blood, so each time that happens, you're going to have 5 seconds less to catch yourself next time because you've lost some blood permanently and you're just not in a good way. But that's a kind of a mechanism for soft failure. Like it's a permadeath game, like Spelunky, and unlike Gunpoint. And when I first tried that and you would just die in one shot from every guard all the time, the mechanics for actually avoiding guards are pretty harsh, and guards are just roaming around all the time, and you kind of have to stay at a certain level of zoom to make sure you can actually see that the guards are even there. And so there's a lot of getting shot without noticing it. If any of you have played it on the show floor, that probably happened to you. It's happened to almost everybody, is to get shot by a guard you haven't seen yet because you zoomed in too far or you zoomed out too far. And that's actually fine. That's a good learning experience, but I didn't want it to actually end the game completely. And I also didn't want to do the saving loading thing. That's auto-saving thing I talked about in Gunpoint before. Didn't work that well for this game because it's randomly generated, and it's not a puzzle game. It's about the sort of challenge of stealth and strategizing in a sort of unpredictable environment. And if you put autosaves, oh, sorry. I just shot the captain of the ship for no reason. If you have autosaves in that environment, then you can just spam your way through everything. Like whatever challenge you have, and when the guard shoots you that you didn't see, you just reload a save game, and then you know exactly where he is, and you'll always win. And in a randomly based game, that's kind of a bad thing because it means that your survival is no longer difficult. It's not really a challenge, and anything that you might gain by continuing to survive in this world and completing missions successfully, getting cool loot from these ships, which is the thing I'm going to add more of. All of that stuff would no longer be scarce or exciting. It would just be a thing you can get anytime you like, because you can always just save and load and save and load and save and load until you become the all-powerful god of this universe. So I did want the permadeath thing, but I was very, very wary of making it too frustrating. And so the fact that when you get shot, you get a chance to recover is a way of kind of tackling that. And it seems to be working because watching people play on the show floor, I think every single time someone's been ejected from a ship, it's been a sort of crowd-pleasing moment, whether they live or die, because you almost always come close to rescuing yourself. So either you just about catch yourself in your ship and then you heal, and it's kind of an amazing, ridiculous thing that you've just done, or you miss, and when you miss, people tend to go completely full speed towards their own body, and then if you miss by like 1 degree, now you're going at full speed away from your body, and turning around in time is an extremely tense and difficult thing. So I've just taken a mission now. That's what the red arrow is pointing me towards. I think I picked Thief, didn't I? So I'm going to be stealing something from this ship. And because I've docked with this other ship, I've hijacked it by taking the captain's chair, captain being the guy I accidentally shot earlier. And because right now all the ships in the game are the same faction, they all are friendly to each other. So even though I'm in this guy's heat sensors and I'm a big ship with a lot of thrust, he is not attacking me because he doesn't realize I'm hostile. He could probably see that ship attached to me, but they just assume that if you've got a ship docked with you, obviously you know who that is and they're your friend in some way. Couldn't possibly be a breacher. So I'm now going to just get back in my pod and go over to you can't dock with like a big ship with another big ship. You have to go back to your actual pod because this is a kind of specialized, rare sort of weapon, really, to take out bigger ships by boarding them. So it's not really represented yet, but I think these airlocks will be kind of sealed in some way. You usually wouldn't leave an airlock kind of unlocked. So your ship is a ship that's designed to hijack those and hack through them. So this is a rather bigger ship. In fact, my target is way in the back there, and I'm nowhere near that. And there's only one airlock here, so this is the only place I can board from. And there's loads of guards everywhere. So this would be a very long and difficult stealth level, and if you get shot at any point, although it's not game over, you're either going to be kicked out of the ship, you'll lose its heat signature, you probably won't be able to get back to it. I've left it possible to get back to the ship will still exist, and your objective will still be aboard there, but usually that's so difficult that you would sooner give up. Shit! Okay, this one has a lot of missile launchers as well, and we're going to possibly get destroyed by those soon. Depending, oh god, if it hits that. Yes, it hit the other ship. Oh my god, fuck, okay. That would have been a great example of what I was going to show next, but now you can't see it, but you can hear it. Those two ships are just destroying each other, and they're big, so it's going to take a long time. And also, they don't stop until they've obliterated what they see as being the main ship. So when ships fight, they often blow each other into several pieces, and then I've had to code a bit of AI that actually detects or decides for itself, like, which piece that I just blew up this ship into is the real ship that I should carry on attacking. So they keep on dividing that like asteroids into smaller and smaller chunks until they're satisfied it's totally dead. So actually, this is a big ship too, so I'm going to hijack this one and show you that. People talk a lot about, like, when you're showing a random game, unfortunate things can happen, and the random generation can screw you. In my experience, it's generally been me that screws me in terms of my actual skill level at playing the game is just not that high. So, oh, this is amazing. This is a huge ship, and it has, I think, no guards. Can you see any guards? I think it's a completely deserted ship, other than the people in the seats. The people in the seats right now can't ever hear you or get up or do anything about it. But I think I'll have them respond to gunshots in future. The idea is they're wearing, like, Oculus Rifts, so they're controlling the ship through those. And they have very good noise-isolating headphones. OK, this ship is a piece of shit. I'm not going to hijack this one. That's terrible. It's got 0 guards, and it's got 3 thrusters for a ship the size of Spain. OK, I'm just going to leave this one and go and get another one. In that case, the random generation did screw me slightly. Although, actually, no, hang on. If I can, it does have a lot of guns, so I'm going to go back to the cockpit, and I'm going to spawn a ship for me to fight. Because I can cheat. And I'm not above it. Let's turn on debug mode. That's not a fair fight, is it, really? Sorry, man. It's funny, you don't have any sympathy for big ships, but you do for the small ones. OK, this guy looks more like our size. Let's see how this goes. If we decide this fight is a bad idea, I can't run away because I only have 2 thrusters. And yes, that's... Holy shit. He's got terrible aim, but he's got a lot of guns. Oh, God, he's got really a lot of guns. OK, I'm going to try and... I've cut off like a wing of his ship. He's much faster than me, so I can't get him off my back. As you can see, there's no collision right now. Oh, fuck. OK, I'm going to run to this exit and try and get my breacher ship over here. He's going to have to fly through the debris that we've created. It's creating about 100 different ships now, so that might slow the game down a little bit. Am I still alive? That's amazing. Am I still in there? Yeah, there I am. So I'm fine. I'm just going to get back to my ship and head off. Sorry, both the owners of those ships, for ultimately killing you and causing a fight that neither of you will really survive. So now, like, every section that got blown off, I could go and board those little fragments. And in this bigger ship, OK, I was actually debug mode on, so that might save me. Everything that got blown off, if there was a corridor leading to it, now there's an airlock there. So now you can board any of those and kind of infiltrate it from the inside. And if I sneak over to these orange triangles, these are fuel canisters. I think in the final game you'll have limited fuel in your pod, and so you'll actually have to steal these fuel canisters and take them back to your ship. But for now, they are basically glorified explosive barrels. So even from inside a ship, you can shoot them and then be spun off. So I'm actually spinning, but the camera stays locked to my piece of the ship. And if I go back to my pod and come and get me, you'll see it spinning through space, hopefully. Jesus Christ, I went really far. I'm 20,000 pixels away. When you blow up a ship, the halves that are the fragments of it that don't have a cockpit and thrusters just spin wildly and can't control themselves. But if there's a fragment that has both a cockpit and thrusters, then the pilot will actually use the thrusters to kind of stabilize, and they will just fly the hell away from the explosion as fast as they possibly can. So there I am, spinning through space in a tiny corridor. We had one guy who boarded a ship and immediately saw there were just loads of guards coming towards him, and so fired at them and shot a fuel barrel that was between him and the guards, which then blew off the only segment of the ship that he was standing in, and that just spun through space just in complete isolation, and the guards left aboard the ship were just staring at like a broken hole in their ship where it used to be. So I think I'm actually going to start again, and let's try an assassination mission, and I'll just see if I can make that work. And I did want to show some other things, so I'm just going to check my notes to see what other things I wanted to demonstrate. Because it's random, not everything is necessarily possible, depending on which ships you get. Oh my god, that's really, really sensitive. So yeah, when that spike touches me, it's seen me. My plan for this is, oh my god! Okay, my plan for this is the 2 biggest things it's lacking right now is it needs kind of some context to your missions. Right now you're just getting them from ships. You see, you do them, you win, and then you just go and get another mission, and you do them endlessly until you die, like a job. but I want that to be less like a job and more like a galactic strategy map where there are space stations all over this galaxy, and they'll all be owned by different factions, and they will have sort of each one will produce a different resource, and any faction will need food, water, ship parts, that kind of stuff. And if they don't have a space station that produces those, then they're in a sort of strategically awkward position, and they'll be hiring you to try and take some territory from other factions. And so these missions you're doing when you're boarding a ship, stealing something, hijacking the ship, killing people, that will all be in service of disrupting the trade routes of another faction or assassinating one of their leaders and basically destabilizing their hold on these space stations so that you can take them over yourself. That sounds really complicated, but I feel like it will probably be relatively simple once it's in. It'll really just be, on the most basic level, you'll still be just doing missions, but if you want to know why you're doing them, you'll be able to zoom out and see the galactic map and see how it all ties into that. And the other thing is, like, aboard the ship, the game of like dodging these guys is, right now it's, oh my god, here he comes. Okay, he saw me, but he didn't fire, so the other guards aren't alerted. It's kind of a sort of, it's not much more advanced than Pac-Man. In fact, it's less advanced than Pac-Man because it doesn't really have much AI. Do you know the ghosts in Pac-Man have different characters? The guards in this do not have different characters, they all just roam randomly. And it's possible I have just mixed Asteroids and Pac-Man, two simplest games. So I'd like that to be a lot more involved. So Gunpoint was all about manipulating your environment and hacking and figuring out creative ways to kind of subvert the obstacles that were put there to stop you. And I would like, if possible, to do that here. And on the most basic level, that would mean you get to this computer, and then from here you could click any doorways to seal that door. Or if there were locked doors, you could click them to open them, but you'd only get a certain number of hacks that you could do on a computer before you're detected. And so you'd have to decide, do I want to like try and lock all the guards in the south end of the ship and then try and get my, my package? Or do I want to maybe open a door to suck everyone into space? Right now, the only way you can get sucked into space is if you get shot. But I'd like you to also be able to intentionally fling yourself into space. So if I like blow up this module, then the airlock shouldn't seal right away. It should actually suck me into space, and then I'd be just flying through the vacuum, and I could pick myself up again. I wouldn't be bleeding to death in that case. And you could use that intentionally to try and like fling yourself towards another ship. And I really want moments where like you're almost completely screwed, but there's maybe just one way you could possibly save yourself. So getting ejected from an airlock and picking yourself up is one version of that. But also I'd like you to be able to eject from your ship when, like if a missile's coming bearing down on you, you know you're not going to be able to get away. You can eject, your ship will be destroyed, and then you'll just be alone in space with no way of ever getting your breaching ship back. And the only thing you'd be able to do would be basically fire your gun, which would propel you in space, right? So it would be extremely difficult and extremely unlikely, but if a ship did go past and you were able to propel yourself with enough bullets to like get near its airlock, then you'd be able to climb inside and maybe take over that ship, and then you'd just be there for the rest of your life because you don't have a breacher ship anymore, so you would only be able to fly that one. So that is basically all I have to show you for now. So yeah, thanks.
We do have time for some questions. Our lovely assistants will bring some microphones down into the aisles here. If you want to queue up next to the microphone, lean into the microphone and ask a question, please do, don't be shy. So fire away. Come on, anyone.
It was such a comprehensive presentation, there was just nothing you could possibly want to know.
Cool. Hello, sir.
Hi.
Procedural generation, the randomness of it all is often a sliding scale, so you can often start with utterly and completely random, which very often doesn't make sense, or completely scripted and very linear and not very enjoyable. How far along the scale would you place Heat Signature, and how straightforward did you find that to accomplish?
I was trying to start with the most every version of a system I implement has to be workable and kind of do its job to some extent. So it can be super, super basic, but it should at least not create impossible situations and stuff like that. So the first version of this ship generation I had, every row of the ship would be connected to each other. In fact, this is a perfect example of it. This is a ship that the first version of this game would have generated, which is, sorry? Oh, okay, that's no good. Could you get the screen back? Is that possible? Okay, so it generates them in rows, and it stacks those rows together. And it used to be that all the rows were just connected to each other, like this. And there would just be one door from each row to the next one, which is very, very simple. But actually, it didn't look, when you looked at it, you didn't necessarily know what the pattern was. But even back then, that would never generate a ship where you can't get from room A to room B. If that happens, it's always because you blew up the ship and you did something. So it would never generate bad layouts. In terms of linearity, it would mean that the route from the back of the ship to the front of the ship would always be just one route, because there's only one connecting door between each row of the ship. And I've since made that a bit more interesting. So let's see if we can spawn a more interesting ship and show you how they kind of crisscross. So now, after it's done that, it still generates ships that way, and then it tries to form interesting connections by making barriers between rooms that are on the same module. So here it's these 3 rooms here, in fact, all of those have barriers between them, and then it knows if these 2 can't get to each other, then they need to get to the previous row, because we know the previous row can get to everywhere else, and then it kind of solves them in that way. So that's how I've gone about making it work. And that's also meant that now there are more than one connection between any given rows. There are multiple different ways to get to your objective, in theory. But I also want it to be, the randomness is not just to make it aesthetically nice. It's to create actual variety between ships. So sometimes there will only be one route to, say, the cockpit. In fact, I think this ship looks very kind of interconnected, but I think you would have to go through here, up here, around there, through there, down there, to get to the cockpit. So if I click there, let's see if my guy actually does that. So it almost is kind of linear, but there's obviously a lot of branches off the side. And the great thing about that for me as a designer is I don't have to design it. I just get to write that code once and then sit back and have it generate loads of levels. And actually, I forgot to talk about it, but the reason this is a randomly generated game is partly because Splunky's so great, and partly because the main complaint about Gunpoint was that it was too short. And Gunpoint was 20 missions long, and it took me 3 years. And the people who think it's too short don't think it was 5 missions too short. They think it was 100 missions too short. So my options are make a short game or make an infinite game. There's no way to actually make enough content by hand that would make people happy and make them think the game was long enough. So yeah, that's why I went down the procedural generation route.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks.
Any more?
Yeah. Hi. What are you thinking about planets?
I'm thinking they're extremely big. And so I'm probably not going to put them in because just at this scale, although you can zoom out very far, a planet would still be, it would fill this screen comfortably. And there's nothing in particular that I would want you to be able to do or interact with on a planet. And so it's another set of problems. And so if you're going to do that, you really need a good reason for why that's got to be in the game. And the way I design tends to be, let's reduce it to the fewest possible elements that gets us all of the cool situations that we want to create. And so I don't have a lot of cool situations for docking with planets and stuff. I think you should play No Man's Sky if you want to land on those things. But that does also, that kind of inform the story of Heat Signature, which I haven't really talked about. There isn't a single main thread, but the kind of context for it is, you've probably seen these gas clouds, which I'll just restart to get to on. These vapor clouds are part of the mechanics of the game and also part of the story of the game, which is that you are in an area of space, which I haven't really thought of a cool name for yet, that is full of these weird gases all swirling around. And that kind of masks you from long-range sensors. So this area is hidden from the law or whatever forces there are out there. I'm never going to say what's going on in the rest of the galaxy or when it's set or anything like that. It's, you are just in this isolated pocket where people go if they want to be hidden and forgotten about. And within that, there are these space stations that are all trying to kind of make a life for themselves and trying to defend themselves against enemy factions. And that also ties into the game mechanics because right now it's not in there yet, but if you're in the vacuum, then, or in the darker space, which is kind of less dense gas, then you'll lose heat very slowly, so the glowing will take a long time to fade. But if you're in gas, then the vapor that's kind of hitting you, I should decide whether it's vapor or gas, shouldn't I? Because those are two different things. The molecules of whatever it is that are hitting you, that makes you much, much easier to cool down. and would also impair the heat sensors of enemy ships. And so if I spawn some, so that big red ring is his heat radius. That would kind of shrink as he goes through a cloud. So you might want to board a ship that has really good heat sensors, and then you would need to wait for him to go through a vapor cloud so that those would be impaired and that you could get closer without generating too much heat that you're detected. And while I remember, actually, I forgot to say that the cool music you hear when you board a ship, which maybe isn't playing, oh yeah, that's because it's not, the ship has no people on it. I'm actually just going to spawn a whole load of ships and see if that causes any problems. Nope. So let's board the biggest one. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I've got debug mode on, that's why you didn't see me. This music is by Ivan Semidolan, who's our other composer, which I forgot to mention earlier. So yeah, that's why it's set in a big mess of vapor and there are no planets and stuff like that.
Thank you.
We have a question here, so if you want to walk while he asks.
Yeah, sure. Hello. You were kind of relating things to kind of like Spelunky with procedural generation, and I noticed yesterday while playing you can like pick up things like added boosters and tech coolant. Is there kind of plans that like with Spelunky where early on you might find like a box of bombs, that would be a massive thing where you could find some kind of technology for your breaching ship that like really completely changes the way the game's going to pan out?
Yes. I'm nodding so vigorously these microphones are shaking. That's exactly what the kind of thing I want to go for. So I didn't really talk much about loot. There are these little upgrades you can get for your pod that give you better thrusters and better coolant, but I also want there to be randomized weapons in the kind of Borderlands style where they have randomized rates of fire and random noise levels, which would be a big deal. So when you fire a gun, you'll see like the radius that it will alert guards in, and any guards outside of that won't know you're there. So if you had a silenced weapon with a very small radius, you could afford to walk into a room full of guards, shoot them all, and no one else would be any the wiser. Whereas if you had a louder, slower weapon, that would be much more cumbersome like this. And so if you found something like that early on, that would all be purely random, and it wouldn't be very well balanced at all. So the first ship you dock with might have this amazing rare weapon in its cargo hold that would just change the way you play for the rest of the playthrough. Because like you say, that really works in Spelunky when you can luck out early on and just get an amazing item that makes the game easier, but is never going to be trivially easy because that's a super hard game. And in the case of heat signature, it's never going to be trivially easy because it's infinite, so you will keep going until you die. So even if you did have a cool weapon, it wouldn't make the game trivial, and of course it would only help in the boarding game rather than the exterior game, this kind of spaceship game. Oh, I got shot while I was talking. And yeah, there'll be more different upgrades for your ship. I'm not sure exactly what yet, but there'll be more in the vein of kind of like special abilities and more unique things. Rather than the simple thrusters and coolant upgrades that are there right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Last one.
Yeah, good. It's actually quite convenient because it's kind of a follow-up question. So in Spelunky, the difficulty, I mean, you mentioned it, so I'll just pick it up. It kind of ramps up, so you start in the mines, which are bloody hard for the people who play Spelunky, but then, it goes even further and it mixes up, like the ice caves don't have floor underneath and the temple is even more cluttered. So I wanted to ask kind of, what is the mode of heat signature to ramp up the difficulty? Like when you have like all these upgrades and you progress basically, like what's going to happen? Are the chips just bigger, or are they mechanics you kind of want to use?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not going to be a sort of endless difficulty curve where it just gets harder and harder and harder. It's going to start out with a few easy ships like the ones I've shown you, where you can just dock no matter what. The heat sensors, even if they're sensitive, there's always a way to just thrust very carefully and get aboard. And those will be kind of like your introduction to the game will be kind of in that way. Later on, there will be ships whose heat sensors are so sensitive that you cannot get near them if you thrust at all. So unless you're going to do the perfect cruise in where you cut your engines and dock with the airlock exactly, which is damn near impossible in this because they're a moving target as well, you would need to wait for them to go through a vapor cloud, for example. And I also want the individual factions to have kind of ranks of ships. So a lowest rank ship, you'll just be able to dock with the airlock like this. And then if you wanted to like board a rank 2 ship, they would just have higher security on their airlocks, and you would be unable to dock with that until you found the right keycard, which you would always find on a rank 1 ship. So if your objective was aboard like a rank 3 ship, oh god, I got to board like a rank 1 one, get a keycard from there, then try and find a rank 2 one and do it that way. And I'd also like to have, so I said before that in this kind of, in the big black void, your heat signature will be much more visible to everyone. That will probably be to an extreme degree where you just can't go through a massive area of vacuum, because there will be pirate ships and stuff out there that can just see you from anywhere, and they will come and destroy you before you can do anything about it. And so if you needed to get to a ship that was in the void like that, you would have to dock with someone else's ship and either just hide until they get there, or actually hijack it and fly it out there yourself, and then only board the other ship when you are, close enough that their heat signature would mask you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And you can play heat signature on the show floor in the rest area.
Okay, I have one quick question. When is heat signature coming out?
I said that would be the only question I got. I was complaining because I can't tell you, I don't know. I started working on it in December last year, and I know what I'm going to add to it next. And I don't know if, once I've added those things, it will be the most perfect and amazing game ever, or if it will suddenly just reveal new problems with the design that I need to then fix. So I never really know until it's done. I didn't know with Gunpoint until a week before it was out. So I don't know, sorry.
All right, thank you, Tom. You can go and play this on the show floor, but let's show a big hand to Tom. Thank you. Up next, we have the very scary Until Dawn, so if you fancy being scared, do come and watch that.